The sun had barely risen when the moving truck backed into the long gravel driveway, its tires crunching against the stones that lined the waterfront property. For months the house had sat empty, its weathered dock stretching out into the glistening waterway like a hand reaching toward freedom. To most, it was a picturesque escape, a dream spot where mornings began with birdsong and evenings ended with reflections dancing across the lake. But to the neighbors, and more importantly, to the neighborhood's HOA, it was an unclaimed territory they had long been eyeing. The new homeowner, proud yet exhausted, spent the day hauling boxes inside, never imagining what awaited. By nightfall, the house smelled faintly of fresh paint and cardboard, while the dock outside whispered with the sound of waves slapping against its posts. It felt like the beginning of a new life, until a sharp knock interrupted the peace the following morning. 3 figures stood on the porch. They were not welcoming neighbors with baked goods, nor curious locals offering introductions. They were board members of the HOA, armed not with smiles, but with folders, pens, and thinly veiled hostility. Their sharp eyes swept past the homeowner, lingering on the dock with a sense of entitlement. Without hesitation, they began outlining their concerns. According to their claims, the dock did not belong to the house at all. Instead, it was community property, meant for public use, supposedly under the management of the HOA. To their surprise, the homeowner calmly produced paperwork showing the opposite. The dock had been deeded with the house, entirely private, and had been meticulously maintained by the property's previous owner. The board members' smiles faltered. The air grew colder. What should have ended as a misunderstanding transformed into a standoff. Before leaving, the HOA made it clear this would not be the end of the matter. The homeowner stood at the window afterward, gazing out across the dock. The water shimmered innocently, but the silence felt heavy, almost foreboding. It was no longer just a peaceful property on the water. It had become a target. The storm was only beginning. The following week, the HOA began its campaign. Notices appeared taped to the door, written in bold, impersonal language, demanding the dock's removal or surrender. Neighbors, once friendly in passing, suddenly grew distant, some whispering, behind curtains as the new arrival walked by. What had once been a tranquil neighborhood revealed itself as a carefully controlled kingdom where the board reigned supreme. At first, the homeowner ignored the harassment, choosing instead to enjoy early morning coffee on the dock, watching fishermen glide by and kayakers paddle through the mist. Yet, subtle changes in the waterway soon became impossible to dismiss. Kayakers no longer passed peacefully. Instead, they stopped, lingering just beyond the dock, staring with disapproval. Boats docked uninvited at the end of the pier, their owners claiming it was community property. The final straw came one evening as the sun sank low. Returning home, the homeowner found the HOA president herself, standing at the edge of the dock with 2 other board members. They had trespassed without hesitation, their shoes leaving muddy prints across the wooden planks. Clipboard in hand, she scribbled notes, muttering about violations and unauthorized structures. It was clear they were preparing for war. The homeowner's patience had run thin. Quietly, they began gathering evidence. Security cameras were installed, documents scanned, and local authorities discreetly consulted. If the HOA was determined to escalate, they would find their opponent equally determined. The waterway, once calm and idyllic, now mirrored the tension that rippled beneath the surface. The fight over ownership had shifted from neighborly dispute to a battle line drawn in plain sight. The stage was set for the next move. The HOA wasted no time intensifying their tactics. Official-looking letters arrived in the mailbox, stamped with threatening language, citing violations of bylaws that, upon closer inspection, didn't exist. They began spreading rumors throughout the community that the dock was unsafe, that it was built illegally, that the new homeowner was selfishly hoarding what belonged to everyone. Neighbors started voicing their resentment more openly. Some muttered insults during walks. Others, emboldened by the HOA, began cutting across the yard to access the dock, treating the private property like a communal pier. The quiet sanctuary had turned into a battleground, with strangers' footsteps echoing on planks that were not theirs to tread. But what the HOA had not anticipated was that the homeowner had done more than simply consult with local authorities. They had reached out to the Waterway Supervisor, a county-level official, whose sole responsibility was regulating docks, waterways, and shoreline structures. This supervisor, unlike the HOA, wielded real authority backed by legal jurisdiction. When the supervisor visited the property, he carefully reviewed the documents, inspected the dock, and confirmed what the homeowner had known all along. It was private, fully legal, and beyond the HOA's control. More importantly, the HOA had no jurisdiction over the waterway at all. The news spread quickly, but instead of retreating, the HOA doubled down. They called emergency board meetings, attempted to fine the homeowner for non-compliance, and even threatened lawsuits. The arrogance of their false authority only deepened. And so, the conflict reached a boiling point. The homeowner had truth and the law on their side. The HOA had nothing but bluster. Yet bluster, when paired with determination, could be dangerous. The question was no longer about paperwork. It was about power. The Waterway Supervisor's involvement triggered a series of events the HOA had not foreseen. When the supervisor filed official reports, the county began investigating. Inspectors arrived, not for the dock, but for the HOA's own so-called community improvements. Several of their shared docks and boat slips were discovered to be out of compliance, lacking permits and even posing safety hazards. The board members, once confident, grew restless. Their secret projects, once hidden under layers of intimidation, were now exposed to scrutiny. Letters of violation and fines arrived at their doors, this time bearing real signatures, real authority. Meanwhile, the homeowner stood firm, watching from their window as the same neighbors who had jeered now cast nervous glances at the HOA leadership. Power was shifting, and the cracks in the board's facade widened. But the HOA was not ready to surrender. They launched one final desperate campaign, attempting to rally residents against the homeowner, claiming the county's involvement was their fault, an act of sabotage that would raise everyone's dues. They stood at meetings, their voices shrill, trying to reignite anger. Yet the evidence was undeniable. Photos of the HOA trespassing, documents proving lies, and county reports condemning their projects left little room for argument. What had begun as an attack on one homeowner had spiraled into the HOA's undoing. The moment of reckoning approached. The final blow came swiftly. A formal hearing convened, with county officials, the Waterway Supervisor, and even a few brave residents present. The HOA board, once so proud, now sat cornered, their confidence replaced by nervous fidgets and shifting eyes. The supervisor presented findings methodically, laying out the reality. The dock was private property, legally protected. The HOA had trespassed, harassed, and acted far beyond their authority. Worse, their own projects had endangered the very waterway they claimed to protect. The verdict was decisive. The board was ordered to cease all claims to the dock, withdraw false fines, and take full responsibility for the unpermitted structures they had built. Individual board members faced fines, and whispers of possible resignations swirled through the room. In the weeks that followed, the neighborhood's power dynamic shifted dramatically. The HOA lost credibility, their influence shattered by exposure. Residents who once cowered under their rules now walked freer, speaking openly of grievances long suppressed. As for the homeowner, peace finally returned. The dock once again became a sanctuary, its wooden planks stretching into calm waters, untarnished by intrusion. Morning coffees were savored without interruption, evenings enjoyed without hostile glares. The HOA had marched in demanding the dock, convinced of their own authority. Instead, they had awakened a fight they could not win, a fight that revealed the limits of their control. They regretted ever messing with the Waterway Supervisor, and the dock stood firm, an enduring symbol of resistance against arrogance.